more in the I mean, we're always kind of aware of people power, at least I am, but I think we're really seeing it today as it's different things. Well, let me just go to the description because I'm all over the place. I like the sentence. The goal is to lift up artists as community leaders whose vision activates neighborhood engagement and community vision. And what's important to that for me is that this is something that happens with art. It's not something that artists do. I mean, they can intentionally, but I think it's part of how they approach the world. So once again, if you have any questions, you can go right to the chat. The questions that the panelists have are how the arts can clarify community development goals, how the power of an artist's imagination transforms dreams into actionable vision, how artists evolve their own purpose as their impact grows, how artists amplify their people power to do more good in their own backyard. And I'm a little zoomed out, so I'm going to just stop right now. I'm stumbling over my words. I'm not making any sense. At some point when I get to the end of this and when I have to speak, I'll probably be clearer. But right now, I'm just not making any sense. So I'm just gonna stop and I'm gonna stop my video. All right.
Thank you so much, Christiana. So my name is Miriam. I'm with ioby.org, ioby, and we're founded in a belief that neighbors know what's best for their neighborhood. We're going to hear a little bit more at the end of this webinar from Greater Pittsburgh Arts Council, from ioby, and also from New Sun Rising about how our nonprofits can bring resources to artists doing civic engagement work or art for the impact that art has in and of itself. What we'd like to start with, though, are 5 speakers who are Pittsburgh artists who've been engaged in the community impacts of art through collaboration and through the people side of how art impacts our neighborhoods and our city and our region. So I'm just going to start one at a time through 5 people. We have 3 questions for each artist. Each artist will take about 5 minutes-ish. We'll pause for questions while we're fresh with that artist's voice, and then we'll move on. And then after 5 artists, we'll have a little more time for questions before we move into the 3 organizations that would like to share resources. So that's our run of show. We've set 2 hours. Based on what I'm seeing, it might be more like 90 minutes, but I appreciate your time to take 2 hours out of your day today. So first we have J Thompson from Bellevue with the Bellevue Mural Arts. And RJ, we're gonna start here with the foundation that artists live everywhere. What has compelled you to get involved in your neighborhood and lead this project?
Sure, great question. So if any of you have been through Bellevue, you know it's a nice quiet little town. And since I've lived here and been on the board of our local CDC, I've noticed that we have a profound amount of creative people, artists, designers, creative professionals in theater and everything, but you don't see it anywhere in Bellevue. So I was compelled to bring the arts to our main street in a very compelling and dynamic way. And one of the best ways to do that was to start with the resources that you have in the community. Utilizing our creative talent and getting them to put their work into our streets was really my goal, and that prompted the Mural Arts program that we did a fundraiser through. So since that time, we've seen a lot of really great engagement and growth with the arts in Bellevue.
Thanks very much, RJ. And how have you seen your creative vision, both yours and the coalition you've worked with, have you seen that creative vision as a tool for community problem solving?
So one of the things that I do professionally is design research in municipalities and communities. And the Mural Arts program was actually born out of the focus groups that we were having through my research. We were utilizing design thinking to stimulate conversations and community engagement here in Bellevue. And we basically determined that many people in the community wanted to see more of an arts presence, but they wanted it under specific parameters. It wasn't as easy as, setting up a gallery and then, bringing artists in. They wanted to see people in the community create art themselves in the community, for the community. So the Mural Arts program is manifesting in such a way that we have people of all walks of life, ages, races, creeds, etc., creating art on our main streets. And that is really the preferable way that we're implementing art and creative placemaking in Bellevue, is through utilizing every member of our community.
Thank you, RJ. And our last question just expands on that. How do you identify and collaborate with stakeholders for an arts vision? Because this idea gathers interests around something you might want to fix or build, and there's volunteers, there's donors, there's collaborators, there's a lot of coalition involved. If you could speak to that more.
Sure. So a lot of folks that have the ability and desire to volunteer, but they want to do so in meaningful and memorable ways. Especially if they're able to use their talents to create or manifest that change that they want to see. So by being able to tap into that, we're able to create the value that they're looking for, as well as continue some longstanding engagements with them beyond just creating that one thing or that one mural. Ideally, through our program, and this has happened already, we've opened the door and we're asking people to walk through it. And by virtue of that, instead of just creating one mural, now we're creating 2, 3, 5, 7. And it grows and grows and grows. And we're able to empower people to use their creative skills in ways that they had not been challenged to do so before, especially here in the North Boroughs. So by virtue of this program existing, we're empowering folks to contribute, and we've had a lot of support, not just from folks in Bellevue, but from the city of Pittsburgh, from the North Boroughs themselves. And it's creating this inclusive, sort of movement to our community. And people are looking at it in a brand new light, which is really exciting from, the idea of cultivating creative talent, also economic development, and so on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, RJ. Let's pause here for questions specific to the Bellevue Mural Arts program with RJ, and then we will move on. And next up I have, I don't think Charlotte has joined yet, so we'll skip to Emily Carlson next just to prepare. Any questions for RJ?
I have one. Who specifically are the collaborators, and how is that process developed? It sounded like kind of a gradual process of onboarding of different kinds of entities who were behind your work. Was that kind of strategic? Did it just happen? Can you describe that a little bit further, please?
Sure. So onboarding was fairly organic. Really where this started was with my design research focus groups. So in those groups, we pulled in specific stakeholders, influential stakeholders from the community, business owners, elected officials, longstanding residents with elevated profile in the community. We bring those people into the center. And over the course of really a year, we conducted a lot of focus groups, interviews, design thinking charrettes, at which point one of the things that they had to do was refer us to people that they feel would have an investment or a stake in Bellevue in general. From that point, we were able to determine who those folks were that were interested and capable of doing something. So we were able to gauge the interest, but understand them as being, people that are making things, that are productive. So at which point we determined several local artists that, have been living in Bellevue and practicing in Bellevue their whole lives or their whole careers, but their clients, their customers were outside of our community. So being able to discover who those artists and creative professionals were was really exciting because we didn't really know who they were. So we were able to sort of unearth this small pocket of creative professionals. We bring them into the fold, talk about some of the ideas that came out of our focus groups, and then we get the artists together, they creative brainstorm, and then from there we develop some concepts, some ideas, some strategies, and go from there. One of the main artists involved in the Bellevue Mural Arts program is Denton, whom is a local illustrator and graphic designer. And in our fundraiser with ioby, we are primarily using her artwork, or used her artwork to solicit fundraising. And we were really successful in that endeavor. So Jenny is very much the art director, creative vision. I'm more on the back end, managing people, and also getting people involved to produce the artwork. So she's also teaching folks how to paint murals and actually laying them out with a grid on the walls and stuff like that. So other artists that we've had, they just want to participate. They just want to be involved. And ideally what will happen is we have many walls and art spaces to put art. So I think everyone will be able to claim their own space eventually.
So sounds like part organic, part strategic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the strategy was in place, and then the people and the players came more organically.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. We have a question in chat that I'll just say out loud for everyone here. Local art by those local artists with regional buy-in. Bravo. Empowering, very empowering. RJ, what did you find engaged the neighborhood best that others might not do?
So we primarily did our fundraiser through social media. We had some smaller in-person events, but nothing really significant. This was primarily a social media marketing campaign to do this fundraising. And one of the things so we had different tiers of donation levels and things that you could get in exchange. One of the things actually we offered, we kind of took an offbeat approach to those donation levels. So if you donated $10, for example, I would show up at your house and sing an improvised song about Bellevue, completely off the cuff, just totally arbitrary and made up. And believe it or not, most of our donations, and we raised, what, $5,000? Most of our donations were in the $10 intervals. So I have like at least 100 different houses to visit between now and the end of our program to sing this, made up improvised song to people. But that was part of our ask, and that was an offbeat approach that was really successful for us. So that was a unique strategy. And then I think, again, Bellevue has not done any arts-based programming before. So the novelty of us doing this project brought a lot of attention to us and a lot of interest in the work, and it brought people out of their houses, so to speak. And that, I think, was an organic thing that happened. And I don't think we could necessarily do that again unless we had a really innovative concept. So but the last part I would say is we wanted to have families involved, children involved in making these murals, really being as inclusive and as engaged as possible in our community. So no one was excluded. I think the combination of those three things really made our project successful and got people to listen to us in a unique way.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. So next we have Emily with Art in the Garden in East Liberty. And first here, just starting out, artists live everywhere. What has compelled you to get involved with your neighborhood and lead this project?
Hello, everyone. So when I was 25, a life-changing traumatic experience led me to promise to be a helper. As I began to heal from that trauma, I began to feel compassion for myself. I found the deeper that compassion goes, the deeper its reach, radiating outward. Oma Center for Mind, Body, and Spirits program Art in the Garden, which is based out of Borland Garden in East Liberty, is one project that evolved. Here's part of the story of how I became compelled to get involved creating, envisioning, and leading the project. When I was 25, I received a grant from the Nationality Rooms at the University of Pittsburgh to study poetry in Lebanon. Soon after I arrived, my Arabic teacher asked us to pin our names and telephone numbers to a map of Lebanon to the neighborhoods where we lived. Her brother had just texted that war tanks had crossed the border into the country, and she was unsure if she should continue class as usual or send us home. As some of the students pinned their names to neighborhoods and refugee camps close to the border, she determined that yes, class was over, and she didn't know when, no one knew when, we would return to the normal we had known. A few days later, a friend took me to a beach. The idea of being to live through or beyond the fear of war, or as the poet Troy Darracott puts it, joy is an act of resistance. We hadn't anticipated that 3 Apache helicopters would approach and begin shelling. My friend ran past me on the sand to find me, and my body froze and my voice stuck in my throat like a bad dream. You know, fight, flight, freeze. I couldn't move, I couldn't call to him. And then I felt the terror in my hands. And when I did, my body became an open door and I could move again. The alchemy of it, love and fear, can't exist in the same place. I ran to my friend on the beach to get him off the beach, to let him know I was safe. He was so close to the helicopters, his hair was swirling under the wind they made. Through one of the helicopter's tinted windows, we could see the face of the young gunner 20 yards up as the power plant to our left became black smoke, thousands of tons of crude oil spilling into the sea. I think it was that day that I said a prayer. I hadn't prayed in a long time. Please, if I live, I will be a helper. With hundreds of others, I was evacuated and headed into a new life with undiagnosed PTSD. Leap forward in time, and my husband and I moved into the Borland Garden co-housing community in East Liberty, our first child on the way. The forces of gentrification and displacement rolled in full force, uprooting mostly poor and working class Black and brown families and tearing apart networks of support and mutual aid for the benefit of white landowners and capitalism. At the height of it, there were pre-dawn raids with armored tanks, which I feared most of all during the invasion in Lebanon, and out of armored tanks came SWAT teams with masks on. They crept into the garden behind our home. How ridiculous they looked to me, hunched in the tulips with their shields. How ridiculous I must have looked to them. A white woman walking as if naked in the open street to ask what they were doing. Maybe it's not violence I fear, but that love will vanish in the face of it. Sometimes during the raids in East Liberty, children would come to our home. One child who experienced these raids with frequency would, while playing in our living room, turn a dollhouse figure into a police officer. In the child's hands, the officer kept pulling up in my son's toy tractor, saying, and her voice gone deep, "Party's over." Children need play. They need safe spaces to work out trauma, to create their own vision of a world in which they feel held and loved. Just as schools teach academic skills, children need support in learning social and emotional skills to navigate challenges such as noticing, naming, and regulating emotions, transporting conflict in ways that respect self and others, and collaborating among and across difference. Art in the Garden naturally evolved and is evolving still as a space that seeks to meet people's basic needs, such as food and education, and a space where together we can experience joy as an act of resistance.
Emily, I hate to interrupt, but your mic went blank for us. Do you mind turning the mic on and off again to reset?
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's, did you hear the end of it, the quote from Troy Darracott? Yeah, okay. So that's the end of what I have for that question.
Thank you so much, Emily. Wonderful. I wonder if you would say a little bit more about the arts programming at Art in the Garden, just to close our circle for today's webinar. And I'm really grateful for you grounding the impact and the community leadership in your programming. Thank you.
Yeah, so some of what the program looked like is we have year-round programming in the arts and ecology for youth and families. And then we also, such as we've had, we most recently had an event with Shabaka Perkins and Taja Thornhill doing West African drumming and dance at Sankofa Village for the Arts. We are getting ready to launch a program with Sandra Moore, who's here with the Clay Project, and Sean Terrell and Cameron Randall to do some drop-off clay and food pickup for families. And then we have a really robust summer program, which is a camp for kids ages basically 4 to 12, and then a teen program through Youth Enrichment Services and Learn and Earn, which trains teen counselors and teen artists and environmentalists.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you.
We have a second question here. How have you seen your creative vision as a tool for community problem solving? If you would like to add any more. Thank you.
So we believe in the power of in the transformative power and healing potential of art and nature, people power. We believe that when we grow in our understanding of connectedness to ourselves and each other and our earth, we are able to create healthier communities. If a tree needs nutrients, mycelium, like telephone lines, can shuttle nutrients from one to the next, among and between. And artists are like that. We're listeners, we're awake to our senses, our emotions, we keep our ears to the ground. We often live experience deeply. So when a challenge or conflict arises, artists have creative ways of addressing it, and often these ways are naturally trauma-informed. That is, they create safe space, build trust, thrive on collaboration and mutuality, empower those involved, and are culturally responsive. When we listen deeply to what is at the root of tension or problem, we allow space for transformation and healing. And that has been true of Art in the Garden.
Thank you so much. And then last here, the coalition that you work with, how do you identify and collaborate with stakeholders to make Art in the Garden possible?
So Art in the Garden is one of Omaha Center for Mind, Body, and Spirit's educational programs and a collaboration with Boiling Green Co-Housing Community. We've been supported through amazing organizations and crowdfunding efforts through ioby, which has helped us to establish a donor base and build community. We're also supported by groups like the Neighbors Committee and the Presbyterian Women at East Liberty Presbyterian Church. In 2018 and 19, we received grants from the Heinz Endowment. This year, the Window Box Garden Club has made a donation, and we are May's Register Roundup at the East End Community Food Co-op. So when you go there, spread the word. So we work with amazing collaborators, teaching artists, and environmentalists. Earth and Vessels provides free breakfasts and lunches. The Clay Project, which I've mentioned, is right now working on creating a ceramic mural with our youth and families. Pittsburgh Cultural Trust artists like the photographer Randall Coleman and master batik and fiber artist Sajuni, Youth Enrichment Services and Learn and Earn, and with SOAR Coaching Academy, West African Drumming and Dance with Sankofa, Theater of the Oppressed last year with Michelle King and Liz Foster Shaner, and the Storymobile with Reading is Fundamental. There's just, when we started, it was just the Boylan Gardeners, who many of whom are teachers and educators, and we just kept holding the vision, and the community kept growing.
Thank you so much, Emily. Wonderful. So we're going to pause here for questions specifically for Emily with Art in the Garden, and then next up will be Molly with the Karaki Project. So we'll pause here. Any questions for Emily? You can either type them or go ahead and speak up. Well, this isn't a question, but I wanted to thank you for mentioning how you're adapting to keep your programming connected with families through this time where we can't be gathering in the garden itself. So I really appreciate you including that. Thank you. Oh, I see a question here from Rachel. How do you see us responding to the trauma of COVID-19? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So one of the things that children are experiencing, from the children that I work with, also as a teacher, is just the challenge of not being with people, not having that connection. And so ways that we can support building those connections seems really crucial during this time, and just really meeting people's basic needs for food, and helping people feel in community. My children are making a lot of noise. Feel in community and feel connected at a time when there's, you know, such social distance. So lots of I could talk a long time on that question. It's a great question. I'm curious how others are doing it too.
Thank you very much. We'll have more time for more questions, so keep simmering. But we'll move on to our next speaker, Molly Rice with Karaki. And Molly, just first up here, artists live everywhere. What has compelled you to get involved in your neighborhood and lead your project, which I know for you is across neighborhood, but a specific community? Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a really interesting question for me. First of all, I am really loving hearing everybody's stories, and thank you so much for this opportunity for all of us to get together. So, in thinking about this question, for me, I received a grant from the Office of Public Art to work with refugees in Pittsburgh, and it was really that general when I received it. I was paired with a refugee resettlement agency, which meant that I had access to and was working with refugees from all across the world. And so there were different populations. And as you guys probably know, some populations live together in community here in Pittsburgh. So the Nepalese, Bhutanese population often live together, very close together in neighborhoods. Also, the Somalis live in Northview Heights, and you know, in some cases, geography really matters as far as community goes for refugees. But I got to know the Afghan population here and became interested in working with them. And for them, it's really different. And actually, I think that geography is part of the problems that they face. So there isn't a large population of Afghans that live here who are refugees. And I found that nearly all of them were on special immigrant visas, which means they were here because the husbands in the family worked for the US military in Afghanistan. And so the husbands were very educated, they were professionals, they spoke English very well. And when they came over, their children started to learn English through school. But their wives had never had the opportunity to learn English. Some of them had never been educated in their lives. They, of course, were sequestered in their homes for years while the Taliban was in power. And the sense of isolation, in part because there wasn't a neighborhood for them, was very powerful. And I got really interested in this as a primary problem in our refugee populations. So for me, the idea of community was not so geography based, and we built a project that was a theatrical / culinary experience for the public that took place all across the city intentionally because they lived in different parts of the city, and we wanted to try to help the Afghan population, particularly the women, feel more accepted.
I think that's how we got to be here.
So, for us, sometimes community is not so much about geography, but more about culture or about history, about shared history, and how do we find ways to connect to people that find a great amount of comfort and import in connecting with each other who physically are not close.
But I think you need to. Yeah.
I'm hearing from someone out there.
Thanks, Molly.
Together.
If you don't mind me interrupting, that's Charlotte and Mo joining the webinar. Charlotte, are you able to hear me? This is Miriam with IOB.
Yes, we just got on, Miriam. Hi.
Hi, thank you. Would you mind, in the bottom left corner, there's a microphone. If you would click that, I will call on you next for speaking to our
Is that
panel.
on?
It says mute. Is it?
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Appreciate you. Okay, Molly, we have our next question here. How have you seen your creative vision as a tool for community problem solving?
So it's this too, I think is really interesting. I think some artists and, you know, even for me in some projects, I sort of go in with a structure or a creative idea or a collection of associations and maybe a site in, you know, inspires me, and I combine sort of my vision, as it were, with the site or with another set of stimuli, you know. But I feel like in public art, it's flipped. And I hear that from the other folks that have been talking here too, that really for me, the vision comes after the connection with the population and the need, finding the need. You know, I feel like RJ and Emily both have spoken to that the first real job for me is to try to become part of the community and to listen really, really hard until I can hear, is there a need that my particular skills or gifts can contribute to? And that's what happened with the Afghan women. So we started with a sewing group because they all wanted to learn to sew. And they started meeting every week. And it's important in terms of creative problem solving, the practical issues that get solved as well as the creative part of things. So by having them meet every week, they had to learn to take the bus. They had to learn about basic things like childcare. We were taking care of their children, and I think that was very, very new for them. They had to learn about, you know, the issue of scheduling, all of these sort of practical issues that were very important if they were going to create a community and really break this sense of isolation. And so they started coming to the sewing group and started to feel less isolated. We also added ESL to the sewing group so that they could also practice their English as well as have the freedom to speak their own language together. So they could speak Dari together. So both of those things were really helpful, and we're solving problems that were more on the practical end. And then after a while, after getting to know them and really trying to listen a lot, I asked them, well, you know, I have this project I want to do. What do you guys want to do with it? And I really thought they were going to say sewing, you know, because that's what we had been doing. And I'm not a sewer. I'm a playwright. I'm a theater person. I was like, okay, I'll figure it out, you know. And what they said is, no, we have been cooking our whole lives, and we want to start the first Afghan restaurant in Pittsburgh. There is no Afghan restaurant in Pittsburgh. And they said, we want to do it together as women. And we had talked a little bit about what co-ops look like. And so then my task became, how do I build a vision around that need? And so what we did is we created a show. We created a theatrical event where you go and you hear their personal stories, that they chose actors who would represent them. And those actors told their stories while they cooked in live time for the audience. And so the audience was introduced to the flavors of their country. And also there was sort of a little bit of a market research element. We did surveys about what foods, you know, people liked and didn't. And so the attempt was really to try to solve practical problems at the same time as create something really creative. And so that's sort of how the creative vision, you know, I tried to open it up to things that artists don't necessarily think about, like childcare and transportation and those sorts of things. But I think with public art, it's really important to think in those terms.
Thank you so much, Molly. And then last here, can you tell us more about collaborating with stakeholders to make the vision possible and keep expanding as the Afghan women decided what was next for them?
Yeah, so this actually was really helped by the Office of Public Art and other sort of hub, what I think of as hub organizations like GPAC, who really, who are in contact with a lot of people and a lot of organizations that potentially could have a linkage to the project. We ended up, we did the project twice. We did it in 2019 in 4 different neighborhoods in the city. And then we came back, we had a lot of interest in it. We had waiting lists of like 50 to 70 people. So we did it again this year. And each time we had partners, probably 20 partners for each run. And they ran the gamut, you know, from CMU. We asked some musicians at CMU to pull from their repertoire songs that that matched how the women described their particular areas in Afghanistan where they came from. So we did a collaboration with CMU, but then it was also the Millvale Police Department. When we were in Millvale, there's a wonderful chief of police, Chief Tim, who just became a really great ally for us. All the way to business owners who were willing to sit down with the women and talk about menus. How do you make menus? You know, what's important? How do you price things that have never been served in the city, right? So, so we ended up really casting our net far and wide to find people that could serve as partners who, and you know, honestly, this city is incredible in terms of the willingness that people have to give to other people. It's been astounding to me from elsewhere, and Pittsburgh is just an incredibly giving city. So I really think if you're an artist who wants to do one of these projects, just ask folks, just say, would you be interested in going in with me on this? You know, even in terms of being problem solvers, it doesn't necessarily have to be a financial ask, so.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Molly, for sharing about Karaki. Does anyone have questions specific to this project? And then next up, we'll hear from Charlotte and Mo with the MoCA project. But any questions here for Molly, please?
I see a couple here. RJ, that's great. You've gotten me really interested in Bellevue. I got to make a trip out there just to see what's going on out there. That's great. And I see here someone's asking about video or media. Yes, I can certainly share that. Maybe there's a way I can share that with the group, Miriam, after we're done. Yeah, I'd love to share that with you, Jessica, wherever you are here.
Is Molly's project ongoing? One person asks.
I'm sorry, I'm here. This is Jessica.
Hi.
Thanks, Jessica.
Sorry, I'm dual. I work full time for the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, so we are remotely working, and so I'm fielding calls since this is Day of Giving. So I apologize, but thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I appreciate it.
Is my project ongoing? Well, you know, here's the most recent thing we did is we did our final, what was intended to be our final run. And it was, of course, from March 14th, I think, to March 18th, right? We had to shut it down in the middle just for public safety. But it was intended to celebrate, this is really unfortunate, it was intended to celebrate the women started their business. They finished their LLC paperwork. They have insurance. They have everything lined up, which is an extraordinary accomplishment for a group of women that really didn't speak English when they came here. And so we did a run of a show, and we are interested in continuing to do the show. We have various sort of, it's a scalable show, and we have various ways to do it. We're planning on doing one at CMU, at Shadyside, but we can bring it, we brought it to PNC. It's a really great sort of opportunity to learn about cultures that are different from our own. And so yes, indeed, it is a potentially ongoing project. Oh, and we are planning on doing one with For Good Pittsburgh in Braddock for the residents of Braddock, so.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move to our next speaker. We have 2 more. Next up is MoCA with Charlotte and Mo in the Hill District with a project called MoCA. Charlotte, are you ready to speak on the mic?
Hello?
Hi, Mo. Thank you.
Oh, there
good.
we are.
There we are. Perfect. Thank you.
Are
It's
we on
Christine.
video? Are we on video or
Yes, we're on video.
are we on video or just audio?
Just audio right now. We can help get
Okay.
your video up.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay.
On
Okay,
the
so what's up?
bottom.
We hear you.
Okay, perfect. So first question here. Artists live everywhere. What has compelled you to get involved with your neighborhood and lead the Mocha Art Gallery project?
Well, initially, I'm born and raised right here on Hellman Street. I was born back in the 40s, and I've had a chance to see the Hill District in its heyday and its decline, and its simulated somewhat called rebirth, of which we're trying to be a part of. We are being an active part of by coming back home. Charlotte and I, we're both from Pittsburgh, traveling the world and gathering all this wealth of information and knowledge and bring it back home so that we could share with the community, which is blighted and torn, fragmented apart right now. And initially, this area used to be the heyday, like I said, where you had the Hurricane, we had the Crawford Grill 1 and 2, we had Harshburgers, we had Mutt's Hut, we had a variety of different venues that we could move around in our own neighborhood. We had artists like Stanley Turlington, Art Blakey, Mary Lou Williams, Ahmad Jamal. This was the Harlem heyday, the Hill District, and this is where the most richest part of the city lies. So being from here and seeing this whole transition, even if we move into this new phase now where we have to talk with masks and via video and stuff like that, I think it's very important that people can see what can be done if you just apply yourself. Come back and see something that's broken, fix it, put it back together. See somebody in need, give it to them, help them. That's what Mocha is all about. And coming back to our neighborhood, we're bringing back that essence of what used to be, hoping that it becomes more and more contagious, not just in the Hill District, but throughout the world. Because like the arts, art is not a luxury as people think it is. It's a necessity. It documents, it categorizes the history and helps educate people and stories about what happened and that knowledge for generations to come. That's how important the arts is. And if you notice around the world that every civilization that ever existed, arts was at the forefront. So in our small little way, we're coming back and setting example as people and their elders, who people called us crazy because we're investing our life savings into something. Nothing's there. It's not going to be there till you put it there. You know, and so we took the resources that the Creator gave us to work with and let the ball roll and let it bounce in the court. We hit a couple of 3-pointers, you know. Sometimes we fouled out. Sometimes things that look like you failed was actually a lesson, you know, because that's not the way to do it. So that's valuable too. And in that process, in that same evolution, you learn something. So you're getting your PhD in life. That's your Pittsburgh Hill District diploma, you know, in lessons of life. So we came back home and invested in the community in which we were spawned, because from here we came and that's where we should return, you know. And so all my relatives are buried here, my whole family and everything, and so is everybody else is in this whole thing, in the thick of things. And so that's why we came back home, because that's where else going to go, you know. So this is what Mocha's about. Right now we're involved in I'm gonna let Charlotte get in, but right now you asked the question, but it's not just a yes or no thing. It's in depth, you know, because one thing leads to another and things like that. Right now we're involved with 2 organizations up here in our neighborhood. We're taking care of the elders with the cooked meals for the sanitarium home, cooked, not frozen, and stuff like that the elders put together. And we're working in conjunction with the Pathway Community Living Project, which is Miss Angela Crawford.
Excuse me, Mo, your mic is a little low.
Let Did you hear what I said?
If you can repeat what you just said, because it was fading in and out, and we can hear you much better now.
Okay, great. Because right now we're partnering up within the community to help our elders. We're doing something, and every little bit counts. So we're partnering up with Pathways Community Living, and that's Andrea Crawford, and you are covered. Andrea Garland, and Beth Crawford. You are covered, along with Mocha Art Gallery and Reverend Grayson, and setting the table once a week for the ones that we could reach. So that's part of what Mocha's about too. It's a vehicle we can all ride in, and it should be shared in the Hill District first and grow out from this rich heritage that we're sitting on up here going blight. We need participation. We need good thoughts, because this is a thing where back in the day, all nationalities lived on the Hill. So listen, that's that in a nutshell. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us now?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, well, I'm gonna let Charlotte get a word in edgewise. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I think you really did. This is Charlotte here. The reason I thought it was so important for us to come back to replenish and do the best that we could to put in our contribution to the Hill. I stayed for most of my adult years in New York City, and there it's rich with culture, but in terms of getting resources and that sort of thing, I think Pittsburgh is a much better fit for us. Here we came and we were actually looking for studio spaces in the Hill. And my niece saw this building that had been here. The building that we're in had been vacant for 25 years. And we saw this building and we got it from the city of Pittsburgh for $10,000. And we added 2 stories. And we feel that the reason that it was vacant for 25 years was there was no sewer system. So we had to put in the sewer system, and it took us about a year and a half to figure out there was no sewer system. We're digging and carrying on, and then we went down to the city and got some maps, and they showed us where the sewer system had been. It was clay, and it was demolished from the age. So we put in the sewer system. We got an architect to
it helped it out
redesign.
in construction business too.
Redesign the building, and now it really is an asset to the community, and it's a way of showing other artists what you can do with a little ingenuity and of course some funding. But we did get a URA grant for the facade, and we also got a mortgage from the federal government. It's called a 203K mortgage, and this mortgage you can get by if you have a building that's not going to be financed by a bank. The government can help with that. That was the reason we could get that mortgage. So it's been a long haul, and we got lots of help. One big help was with our architect, Charles Culbertson. He designed this beautiful building for us. We also got help from Ollie Ministries, who helped us with the elevator and sprinkler system. And we could not have done this without that sprinkler system, because that is mandated by the city. And we also got grants from Poise, and we were able to access this funding from the CDC, and they were our fiscal sponsor, so that we were able to get grants even though we're not yet a nonprofit. So it's been a long, wonderful journey, and we would encourage other artists to
come join us.
Because we're in our I'm not going to tell you how old, but we are seniors, and
I'm looking at 80.
if seniors
happy about it too.
If seniors can do this, what can a young person do? But we have wisdom. That's Christine's face. We see your face, Christine. We don't know if you're still hearing us. Can you still hear us?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
Because it's a still picture.
So We are artists, and we wish to have other artists join us. We have had music here with Eric Johnson and Tony Campbell, and we were just poised to really start when this horrible virus came upon us. We'd given one dinner because we were going to help everyone that IOBY had that had helped us to fund our financial journey with IOBY, and also others that had helped us. And so we had this dinner, a wonderful dinner that was prepared and helped us with Garland. We sent out invitations to everyone, but that was just when it was starting. So a lot of people did not come. So we're probably going to maybe have to have another dinner for everyone. But that's pretty much the answer to that question. I
forgot what the question was now.
Thank you so much, Charlotte and Mo.
All right, thank you, Miriam.
Thank you. I have one more question just to drive home the leadership and visioning of artists in community development. Could you say a little more about how your creative vision with MoCA has been a tool for community problem solving on Center Avenue and in the Hill District?
You want to?
Well, I'll try to respond to that, because for the last 4 years we've been doing MoCA out here. My experience is in construction. I was in 1058 local, built the subway downtown. So I know structure, and I know things about how to build things. But what we envision is that, spawning from here, we'd like to see artists fill this area. There's lots of land around here, and there's lots of proposals going on right now. To people who are ahead of the game right now who have ideas what to do with it, but we have to go through the process up here to find out what it is and whether it's feasible and how does it work well with the community. So in that respect, there's a lot of irons in the fire already, but that I wouldn't let that discourage any artists that can come forth with their ideas. Just come on, bring them on. Wherever you see it, it starts everywhere. Wherever you see something you can make a difference, do it. Jump in there, and then the doors will open, because you'll never know what kind of help you receive if you come out there and step out and bring your ideas forward. So that's what we want to show the community, and like it's happening in so many other cities already, but how communities pull together through the arts. And the artists are actually the ones who build up the community. So MoCA wants to encourage everybody out there that's an artist, come out of that closet, bring forth your ideas, come to MoCA with them, and let's see what we can do. We're going to have jazz once a week over here. We're going to have all kinds of things. We're going to do some things like maybe just for the kids, a gong show or something in that effect, where they can come in and express their visual arts and their verbal arts and all the rest of the arts. No droopy pants though, to come through and bring their ideas forth, because they're very much needed at this time. So there's lots of room in here and a lot of void. So come on, let's fill it up. That's what I would say to young artists who are afraid to step out there, because if they only have $10, they're afraid to spend $8.50 of it. Spend it. That's the only way you're gonna get some more. But when you spend that, it'll come back in different ways that money doesn't matter. It's about people seeing your idea and have a part of it that they can contribute to you that will help you along the way. But if they don't know you're trying to do anything, they don't know what to do with these relics that they're sitting on. That's all parts that are all parts of the big picture.
And I'd like to say also that come to the Hill. There's lots of resources for the artists, and also it's so sorely needed. We need as much energy, artistic, musical, theater as we can get here, because it's a rich area. And just like we didn't know that we were going to be able to get funding through McAuley Ministries. We couldn't have done it if we knew all the answers before we started. We would not have started, I'll tell you that.
We did.
We had known all the obstacles. We
got to take a chance. I mean, what else are you doing? I mean, come on, let's get with it, people. Come on, let's go. Come over to MoCA. Would it be okay if we tell them how to reach us or something? Or
yes, sir.
Pardon?
Yeah, share your contact. You can put it in the chat if you can see the chat right there. You can share your website, your email address.
Okay, so we would type that in after, is that what you're saying? Or just say it?
Or just put a card up there. You got a card if you got a camera. We don't have the camera thing.
Yeah, we got the camera.
You can type it into the chat and everybody can see it and write it down.
Okay.
Do it.
She said get it. Okay. But it's an adventure. It really is an adventure. And if you want to jump on our bandwagon, we have a card here that we shall share with you. And I hope, let's see.
Let me hold it, Charlotte. You do that now.
Okay. This is the building too. You see a picture of the building. Can you see that? Is it possible to see?
We are not able to see it.
Because we don't have a camera on.
Oh, wait.
We do. They see us.
There's a camera in this phone.
They see us. They see shit.
How do you hit that?
But anyway, we'll just
let's see what happened here.
Our address is 2297 Center, the CENTRE Avenue, Pittsburgh 15219, and the website is Mocha at Soho.
On Soho.
Mocha on Soho.com.
It's partially up right now. It's kind of help we need. We need Jim Morris to know how to come over here and help us with this computer stuff too.
That's right, because it's a lot that we don't know. We know how to build. We know the arts. We both artists. Mo's a sculptor and a musician and a painter, and I'm a painter and a hat maker. So we know that part, but a lot of this technical things, we could really use some young energy in here to help us.
Yeah, we could do it virtually like this. We could you do like what's your never word for geek? It's hip. It's a squad. The Greek squad comes out and helps you with your stuff. There's some bad guys out there. Okay, so where was I?
Any other questions?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We got your website out to everybody and your address for people to visit when the time comes. Does anyone have questions for Charlotte and Mo about the Mocha Art Gallery? And then we'll move to our last speaker for today.
I forgot one thing though. I forgot to thank you because you were wonderful. The ioby. We were trying to thank you with the dinner, but that didn't, because of COVID, that
Thank
happened.
you.
We would like to thank you in person.
And we'll do it again.
You have a wonderful organization that's helped so many in the Pittsburgh and the New York area. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Charlotte and Mo. I so appreciate that.
So get the questions could come now, please.
Oh, okay. We're ready for any questions you might have. Anybody out there have a question?
Anyone?
I have a quick question for you. In terms of the help that you need with technology or with other items, do you want us just to send you an email or give you a phone call if we have some available time?
Yeah, both.
The email would be, I'll give you two, Charlotte, CHARLOTTE.
It's on the card.
KA, you couldn't see, 346@gmail.com, or number one.
And, not or, both. CC.
And one Moses, one, the number one.
The number one, Moses, MOSES, 123 @gmail.com.
And the telephone numbers are there. It's
for me, it's 412-692-1444. And Charlotte's is 718-249-7002. She's the artistic director. I'm the musical director at the Mocha.
And on our card, we have one little saying here. It says, "Return to old watering holes, for dreams and visions are there to greet you." Friends and dreams are there to greet you.
That's beautiful.
That's the way to contact us by phone or by phone or email is the best way.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us. And that's the only question?
Thank you so much. Yeah, and we have a comment here that your art gallery is a wonderful public art project for the whole Pittsburgh community. Thank you for all your efforts to capture the art and history of Pittsburgh. So the audience is speaking up that they really appreciate your speaking today. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
you. We appreciate them too, you all.
And
We
once
need
we're
you all.
open, we will be so happy to have you here.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you both.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Miriam.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Next up, we have Christine Kroger with the Beaver Halls Community Mosaic. And Christine, if you don't mind starting with the big picture here, artists live everywhere. What has compelled you to get involved with Beaver Falls and lead this mosaic project?
Yeah, first, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to hear all of the different projects. And I can't see Mo and Charlotte, but like I can feel who they are just from their voices and their personality. So this has just been a pleasure. Thank you, Miriam, for inviting me. Yeah, so artists do live everywhere. And I actually have lived in many places and practiced art in many places. So this is a great question. And I really believe that art is a vehicle that connects people in really distinct ways. And I think these projects have all really shown that. And everyone is really unique, but they have that common thread through them. So many summers ago, the last place we lived prior to moving to the Pittsburgh region, and I'm living in Beaver Falls, which is in the Rust Belt. It's a steel town along the river in Beaver County. And so we moved here about 17 years ago from Frederick, Maryland, which is a very artistic environment. And so many summers ago, right after we moved here, I had the opportunity to organize a collaborative arts festival between 3 of our youth development organizations. Did we ask them to mute it again?
Right in front of them.
Yep.
Charlotte,
Yes.
can you guys put your microphone on mute?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So there's just been a history of maybe some of these youth organizations not working well together or collaborating really well. And so we organized this an arts festival, and it really brought them together, enabled them, love the description of people power, right? Really brought them together through art. It was an interesting thing. And so just being able to see how this successful event evidence how the arts do create a bridge between folks and connect folks in unique ways, especially in a very sports-oriented Rust Belt town. That was really inspiring. So fast forward about 6 years ago, a friend of mine, Renee, who was just at that time opening a pottery studio, she and I had this like kind of scheming and dreaming conversation about creating a signage for her shop, which ended up being 225 square feet community mosaic. But it was supposed to be signage for her shop at that time that would reflect the different voices of our community. And so I was delighted at the opportunity to kind of connect to that civic and youth voice to a piece of public art for our space. And so that's, I think, that's what drew me, compelled me to be involved with that project. So in a nutshell. So
In a nutshell, thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
Would you talk more about the Beaver Falls Mosaic vision and how that vision came together as a tool for community problem solving?
So the vision was, that's a great question. So really believing that art helps to revitalize a community. We thought it was important for the vision to come from as many people in the community as possible, to come from as many diverse voices as possible. And so problem solving is done through relationships and through building bridges. So, and one of the biggest challenges that Beaver Falls faces actually, as it enters into the future, it's reimagining itself. And so one of our biggest problems is one of identity. And so that identity has been defined, although we have many assets, many strengths, but one of the, some of the things that defines Beaver Falls are things from its past that are fractured and dependent on some really unjust and hierarchical systems that are, that we're all really familiar with in our conversations, right? So in recognizing that challenge, that some of the voices have not always been heard in the conversations about identity and place, we thought, rather than just using one artist's vision for this great big mosaic that's going to reflect the identity of Beaver Falls, our process pulled together 20 individuals from a variety of different groups in our city to work collaboratively towards the goal of creating this unified vision. And so that took a long time, because normally when I would do a large scale community piece, I would, you would come with one artist's vision and then others would collaborate on the actual making process. And so this time, we pulled together all these folks, and it gave each person an equal voice in that process, whether they were a middle school student or someone coming out of addiction, or in one of our youth development programs, or a college student or an adult. And so it actually took us 2 years to create this this piece of art, which was a really long time. And a full quarter of that time, about 6 months, was spent in the visioning process. We met weekly, and so we were listening and learning from each other. Friendships were formed across socioeconomic, racial, age, and gender lines, and ideas were really shared. And so some of the high school students, some of the students who are middle school students now and are graduating at this time, like now, would say like really they felt like it was family, right? So this was like a family to them. We met every week. And we also learned from other communities and artists about the mosaic process, because many of these people were not artists. They were just folks from our community. And so that would inform our own creative art making process as well. And so they were learning how to be artists through that process. And so once this core group of folks had come up with the idea or the vision for our project, and trust me, we started out like all these different places, because everyone had their own idea of like what Beaver Falls was, and how art could transform our community. That was our question that we started with. And no one had the same idea, but we came together with this cohesive idea at the end. It actually looks nice. So, which was the crazy thing, it worked. But so once we came up with this common vision for our process, we invited the public into weekly art making sessions. And then we invited, we connected with like the local college to come and bring students down every week, and other organizations in the city. We took the Mosaic to local arts festivals, so hundreds of folks could put hands on and help create this out of recycled shards of pottery, which made the whole process even more challenging, but that's why it took so long. And so then, yeah, so now it hangs on a wall on Main Avenue, and once it was put up, the community just really feels like they have buy-in. But I think the problem-solving piece of it was the identity piece, and the story that we're able to tell over and over again is that this was a collective vision, and that process, and the 20 people who were really who talked about it and did it, you could see their story being told through it, and their identification with it. And it was an amazing process. So I think that yeah, that problem solving is done through relationships, and those bridges were built in lots of places in our community through that time. So it did take a long time though. But yeah, I would say it worked.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Yeah.
And can you say more about collaborating with stakeholders to make the vision real, and maybe some of the different types of stakeholders, because I'm sure you were surprised by people who joined this really big team.
Yeah, so I think part of the identification, we've heard this, throughout the days, reaching out to the circles you're already involved with and allowing it to spread through from there. So I think from part of my own work, I worked at the local library and was involved with, I'm on the board of our CDC, but also then allowing it to connect through the local youth development organizations, the churches, the colleges, local arts programs, but it did continue to flow from there to like places that you're not connected with too. So letting those bridges just keep going out. Inviting folks in that would not necessarily, like folks who were experiencing homelessness came every week, and then they were part of that as well, which was really beautiful. And because this particular project involves so many people and groups, in both the planning process and the creating process, we had a large group of people from our neighborhood, like really emotionally invested in this project, which was great. But because it took so long. It took really a number of years to both find a suitable and structurally sound location for the mosaic. It was very heavy. It was on 26 pieces of hardy backer concrete board, or cement board, so it was really, really heavy. And so it took us a while to find a location for the mosaic on Main Street, and to raise the funds to install it properly. And so we needed to maintain awareness of and energy around the project to be able to continue to raise funds towards its installation, which did take a long time. So because I'm on the board of the CDC, and through projects, we have other neighborhood revitalization projects, and we kind of partnered with them, like those spaces in between, which revitalizes vacant green spaces to make green spaces in our neighborhood. So we partnered with them to do some of that work there, and do murals and things like that to raise money for, like, we would sell we would do silhouette murals and sell, like, auction off, you can have your silhouette on the wall and raise money for the mosaic. We partnered with the Arts Council, which is part of the CDC, and artists would donate artwork for things like that. And so we sought to raise awareness of the project and to continue to tell the story throughout the years. It took almost 6 years from the time we started to the time it was installed. So that's a considerable amount of time to keep your interest in it, unless you're personally involved. And so the Arts Council finally took on the financial and legal ownership of the mosaic and held multiple fundraisers over those years. We also partnered with ioby, which was great, to hold a crowdsourcing campaign in coordination with a final fundraising event in the months leading right up to the mosaic's installation. That was really helpful to kind of get the story out to as many people as possible and allow folks to just donate, like, just small amounts of money throughout I think a couple $1,000s at the end, maybe, right? So over that final line, and allow people to just donate a little bit to be part of the story. And from what I've been told, the community, like I said, feels really, really the same ownership and pride today when it was installed as they were when they were first creating it. I think the most important thing and the most exciting thing for me is, like, the kids who were part of the mosaic are always going to be able to point up to something really physical and tangible and just say, like, we were part of creating this really tangible piece of the Beaver Falls community fabric. And so that's the exciting story for me. Yeah. So I think that's all I have right now.
Thank you so much,
It's one project, but I think that was the first piece of, we don't have an arts program. So the Arts Council kind of rose up out of this. And I think arts and murals and things like that are starting to now we have a lot of artists. I think RJ had kind of said there were artists there, but there had been nothing going on before. And so I think this was the first project that started to kind of make a cohesive artist community start rising up. And so, and that it took that long to be installed, and that we kind of persevered and continued pushing forward, and that it's up there now. It's been really celebrated by our community. So that's exciting to see, yeah.
Thank you so much, wonderful. So at this time, I'd like to open for questions to Christine or to any of our speakers from today. And then after some questions, Christiana with GPAC, me from ioby, and Dan from New Sun Rising will each share resources from our nonprofits for artists working in arts projects, but especially those with community collaborations. So any questions to any of our speakers right now? Well, Christine, a question I had for you, since you're not in the city, you're in Beaver Falls, was just any context you might share from slightly more rural organizing around getting arts into community development conversations. As a Pittsburgher, I know I have a sense of dense neighborhood, and when I spoke with you and we met in person, I had a sense of like a more spread out strategy for your engagement.
Yes. That is very true, Miriam. And I feel like that's Yeah, so I so appreciated you coming to meet me in Beaver Falls, so you can like understand, right? Sometimes when I talk with folks in Pittsburgh, you're like, no, it's the context that matters so much. And so when I shared with you just now, like that how significant the installation of this particular mosaic was, you can understand what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So. So repeat that again, because I'm sorry.
No worries. I tend to ask kind of rambling questions. So I was just curious if there's anything more you'd like to share about the contextual difference of art being a part of community development in a more spread out, slightly more rural context versus some of our collaborators who could visit their neighbors door to door or have a gathering spot on the main street in their neighborhood.
Yeah. So, well, we're a town. That's what I thought you said too. We're a town. I think what the difference is, and so that's why I kind of started about having art really be in the beginning, like I think there just wasn't a history for art to be an important connector prior to this. So I think it's being introduced as something where you can see where sports is such the community connector, right? I mean, if you want to connect folks and you want to meet with folks, you go to football games, you go to basketball games and everything else. I think now we're starting to see that, no, actually, you can start going to musicals and folks will congregate there. So I understand what the question was like. We're a little more spread out. It's a little more challenging, but I feel like the arts are starting to be infused into the community conversations, and you can see that it's beginning to build bridges and just doing that slow relational connection, which is so important, and it's been really impactful. I mean, it's a really good slow work. It's like, planting a tree and watching it grow, and so but it's a little more challenging than when you're a little bit closer. When you're more spread out, it's going to just take a longer time. So, and you're going to have to be far more intentional. So, yeah.
Thanks for that perspective. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of our speakers have thoughts you'd like to share as part of closing here? We may have one or two questions come through, but I also want to open it up to speakers if you'd like to share a last point.
There was a question, I think, from Diane Turner. Do you see yourself doing more mosaic artwork for community revitalization? Was it effective?
Is that for me?
Yes.
So I have done, so that was a very large scale one, 225 feet in diameter. But I've done more in the past. I often connect with, I work with the schools a lot. So we did one with all of the 3rd to 5th graders in one of our elementary schools in one of our local community spaces. And so it was around, actually the theme of it was community. And so they each created a piece of it, and then we installed it in one of our community spaces. And we've been working on murals of silhouettes throughout the town to go down through the wall. So I do, but I usually work with students. So either college students or middle school to high school students, and sometimes elementary school students. So as far as mosaic work, I would love to, we're kind of talking about doing another piece in the coming year, if we can. So that would be great. Yeah, I would love to. But often I do like to work with students to have them be able to do artwork in the public space.
I'd like to respond to David's question regarding assessment and evaluation. Considering that our projects, the Mural Arts program, our fiscal agent is Bonafide Bellevue, which is a community development corporation. This is Bonafide Bellevue's first sort of foray into arts-based programming, arts fundraising, and arts support. So being able to track as many metrics as possible is really, really important to us, considering that we started off strong with our fundraising. We want to finish strong with project execution because this will be a springboard for potential, grant submissions in the future. So we're trying to track not only our metrics on who's participating, how long, where our donations are coming from, but also what's the beat on the narrative of our story online? What's our social engagement looking like? Tracking as many things as possible in order to get a very clear picture on how Bonafide Bellevue can sustain an art project of the size that we have now and larger ones in the future. And of course, being able to report that back to any funding institution is going to be critical for our success. So I think that's a really great question.
Yeah, I'll respond to that a little bit too. I would love resources on how best to evaluate in more quantitative ways projects such as the one that we did. So some of the challenges have to do with the process of moving from being a new refugee to someone who is a part of a community. That process works on its own to some extent, although I do think our project has been a large part of the women's experience in the past. It's been a 2-year project, so I think it has affected them. But to untangle those two things would be of great interest to us. A couple of the ways that we assessed was the project effective, that we had a lot of audiences. One of our audiences was simply the 5 women who created the business. And one of our sort of rubrics for success was first of all, the first round of our project was the first show. We decided we're just going to get to doing the first show, which basically was a series of catering events for them, how to get a sense if you really do want to have a business. So we got there, and I feel like our major evaluative question was, do you want to continue? Do you want to actually have a business? And the answer was yes. And so we went that route, and we got a lot of help from Ron Gatos in developing a plan for a collaborative business model, and we got help from other partners, and we're able to meet that milestone. But another audience for us was the actual audience that came to see the show, and how we dealt with evaluation for that is we did have surveys. A lot of the questions were food-based because we did want to create a little bit of market research for the women, but we also asked to get about, was the performance effective? What was the experience like? And that sort of thing. Again, more quantitative than qualitative data. And I would, again, really love some ideas for how to assess these kinds of projects. And as far as lessons learned, that's another part of your question. As an artist, the biggest lesson, I think, for me, I had done other public art, fairly large public art projects in the past. But I'm always surprised at how many assumptions I go in with, even as someone who works hard to fight that natural tendency toward assumption that we are the same or that we have the same issues or challenges. It is always astounding to me how much breakdown of that has to happen for me to really understand, or not even understand, but to assist, to help. And so for me, that's always seems to always be the takeaway is, how do I work on that natural tendency toward assumption or toward, feeling like I know more than I do, and start as completely teachable in a new environment with a new population. So, and I also I just also wanted to say, as far as ioby goes, thank you so much. The way that ioby is a terrific platform. The amount of service and support that you give is terrific. I've never seen that in any other platform. But the other way that you've really developed our ability to do our development is periodically you offer and find local matching programs, and that made a huge difference, especially when we had to cancel our production. A lot of folks were willing to donate their tickets. And because we had a matching grant, it's just saved us. It saved our organization. So I really appreciate that. That's helped us twice. And it seems like you really look for local funders and ways to create those matching experiences. So thanks so much.
This is David. Thank you for those interesting responses. And I offered up Christiana. I told her I'd send along some evaluation resources that hopefully she can then share with others. I volunteered her before asking, but she's going along with it. So I'll hope to have some items that she can share with you all before too long.
David, I was going to thank you so much for that. Evaluation is something that's really helpful, and it's something that as a creator, it's like the other side, and it's really crucial. I just wanted to share that one of the evaluations that we've found useful is the PMC, which is it's a measure for assessing youth program participation. And it looks at health and well-being and a number of different elements. So that's something that was shared with us and that we found helpful as a model. And then it's been helpful and instructive for us to share, to just kind of survey the people that are involved, the children, the parents and caregivers, and then at our Surviving to Thriving training seminars for teachers and community members around adverse childhood experiences and supporting folks, which is most of the population of the world who have experienced trauma. Surveying people after that has been instructive for shaping our programming. And yes, I would love more resources.
And one thing I'll emphasize when I send stuff out is really aligning planning and evaluation. You talked, Emily, about your personal experience and what went into that, but there are also kind of systematic ways to take the temperature of communities with deep listening and other kinds of tools, both even secondary research, but then anticipating what your outcomes and how to measure those when you're planning to begin with. And sometimes, having been in evaluation a long time, evaluation can be a bit of an afterthought. So the more folks can really integrate that into their initial planning, all the better. So that will be at least some of the emphasis of things that I send along before long here.
Great, and I think it's really in this time where we're all facing so many new challenges, to do some of that in advance is so crucial, because we're really not fully aware of each other's circumstances, and it's harder to be aware when we're stuck in each other's homes and those day-to-day conversations aren't happening as frequently.
Well, look forward to more communications on all that.
Wonderful. I just want to say a thank you to all of our speakers and to all of you for sharing this time. We have recorded this, so we'll be sharing the recording link out in our channels. And right now we want to transition to talking a little bit about resources for artists that the 3 nonprofits on this webinar can bring. And thank you to all our speakers. I'm really grateful for you sharing your personal and professional growth and your path, and how you've brought more people together to use the arts for our community engagement work as a people. Thank you. I'll hand this off to Christiana to talk about resources.
First, Miriam, I'm so glad that we continue to do this despite what happened. And this was going to happen in the big room. And so I'm glad we decided to utilize technology in this manner to bring this subject to you guys. I echo her in saying thank you for your stories, for how you transformed your experiences, how you deeply connect with the communities that you are working with in an authentic manner. I think that's important in anything that we do as artists, that it's comes from a real authentic place. I see that we're short on time, so I'm not going to go on too long. A lot of things can be found on our website, so I kind of just want to talk about the approach of it. And I approach it as an artist, and being an artist informs my arts administration, and in a sense, and so it's 1980 and 80s in the Pittsburgh, and there was nothing here. And like most of us, we left. I left because I didn't know what community was. I did not feel a part of Pittsburgh whatsoever. I didn't know what it meant to even be connected in that manner. And I traveled a lot. I studied in Switzerland. I worked in Alaska. I lived out of my car in the Southwest. I worked on a farm in upstate New York, just getting a real sense of what communities are from an urban to a rural standpoint, and how people connect and make things happen in all these spaces. They, a lot of these spaces were very, very small, and art was everywhere. So that's, like Charlotte and Mo were saying, I came back with that kind of new information to bring back to my hometown, a place that even while I didn't feel connected, it still was home, and it represented a place, I think, of great resources. And the resources that I came back to in the 90s were people. I joined Women of Visions. I joined a lot of different groups, and it was the people of Pittsburgh that that drove me to come back. And then also my experience of being a student, and at that time, what we see today existing as far as resources, as far as arts in Pittsburgh, none of that existed. And I think I just want to highlight that people made all of the things that we use today that exist now to support everything that each of you are doing. And I find that really amazing, having seen Pittsburgh go from having nothing to having, we have organizations that have arts administrators that can assist you. My colleagues here, Dan and Miriam, we're all supporting you, but we do it in such a unique, different manner, and that it's complementary, and that it's amazing that these things exist. And so I think that really highlights the essence of what we're talking about as far as people power, because we've all been able to create resources in response to what it is that you need. There's certain things at GPAC or the Arts Council that have been in response to deeply listening to the community, and have been inspired by artists who come to me with an idea. In particular, Fair Play, Pittsburgh Music, that was Heather Croft, and we held a lot of focus groups to find out what's happening with the music scene that was flourishing and seems to be kind of sinking. And that kind of evolved into being sitting at the table with the Pittsburgh music ecosystem that created this amazing report. And at this point, that'll probably become its own nonprofit. We have our own in-house program, Art on the Walls, which was a response to moving to a new office and not wanting to, not support the visual artists that we had as members. We didn't, at that time, we were very focused on performance groups. And that has in itself grown into, Aaron's on the call, so he can probably mention more in the chat, but we have clients at this point. We have the in-house Art on the Walls on our 7th floor, and we have clients such as Visit Pittsburgh, the mayor's office. This involves working with multiple stakeholders to launch these exhibits in office and businesses. And we have sold over $60,000 worth of artwork. So there's this connection of meeting with people and hearing their idea and providing resources. And even in some cases saying, like with Fair Play, they've become a member of New Sun Rising. So there's, for me, I'm the kind of liaison that try to connect people. And the other important thing before I get off is that Pittsburgh, we joke that Pittsburgh has all these bridges, but we're so disconnected. And we can stay in our own neighborhoods and never leave, that kind of thing. And so it's always been very important to provide connection to resources, to funding, to people. And part of that connection, I use the lens of equity, because for me, equity is having full access to everything that you need to be able to do what it is that you want to do. Whether you're disabled, whether you're Black, whether you're Afghani, no matter who you are, it's what I've identified as what keeps people from achieving their vision, is not having full access to the tools and the resources and the funding and the people and the stakeholders, and how to even do the education of how to even make these things happen. So a lot of these things you can find on our website, the Pittsburgh Artists Resource website. There was the HeHo Health and Housing Fair that we did. These things are located on our site, but I just wanted to highlight the power of people for where we are now. Like, each of you have made and continue to make incredible things. And that inspires a whole nother generation of creators. So thank you. Dan?
I thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me. We often, people thank us. I'm not a good speaker. I'm an introvert by nature. So I apologize to begin with, but people thank our organizations. Like, really, we thank you for the work that you do. And we're just there to support the work that you do. So thank you for what you're doing, because it's in here. Molly talked about, starting with the people. For New Sun Rising, we're focused on communities and projects that help communities. That includes cultural activities, but it's really the residents that create the work that we're able to support. And like Christian said, like, we talk amongst each other to see where we can place people as far as getting them as many resources as possible. I'm one of those people that you should talk to everyone to get as much help as you can for all of your projects, not just one particular organization. Like, what works for you doesn't necessarily work for other people or for other organizations. We provide a lot of fiscal sponsorship, but we also send people to ioby because of the great work that Miriam does. Really helps the projects on the ground and helps the neighborhoods that they serve. I just want to say that artists in general, we're a group of people that find ways to innovate when there's craziness happening in our world. And we find ways to push the envelope, and people listen. I know I've seen a bunch of work from a lot of the people on this call, even like in Christine and Beaver County. I think it was Monaca. There was the artwork on top of somebody's garage, the toilets. That speaks to somebody wasn't happy with a local ordinance, and so they used art to voice their displeasure, right? And then to David's point, we all need to be more data driven, but if you're an artist, like I see being data driven, especially when you get to the point of seeking more and more funding. It's shown that data driven nonprofits produce better outcomes as far as what they say they're going to do, and then receive better funding. So data is really important. We believe at New Sun Rising, we have an initiative that's kind of still starting off about collective impact. So there's a lot of examples here on the call of a bunch of people getting together to be a more one unified voice to make changes at systems level. And I know that the Arts Council is great at being that voice for artists in particular, while still talking our language. You know, the thing that I've noticed is that in data-driven, why it's good to make sure that we do participate in all of the surveys that come out of places like the Arts Council, is because it's a unified voice and it's the language that we speak. We at New Sun Rising, we use the UN SDGs just because we're looking at an audience of a national audience, and so we're trying to make the UN SDGs, which is international by nature, more local, to kind of make that comparison to a broader audience. I'm probably rambling, but you know, I see everyone's like, yes, you are. You know, but like, again, like, I thank all of you for the arts that you do. And like, I'm more interested in how we can help you as artists and as community members to show the work that you're doing and receive funding from other sources. And I know Grits is on the call, and like, they're like, art just moves you. And like, I used to be I used to do street theater in New York City, and like, art changes minds. Arts are able to show people who may not have the same thoughts of you to change their minds. Like, you know, we're so important, and this is the time that artists can again step up and make a difference in their own communities. You know, to our politicians, you know, like, we should be heard during this time. And yeah, so I'm going to shut up now. Yes, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Yes, thank you, Molly.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So my name is Miriam, and I work with a nationwide, sorry, quarantine brain for me means losing my words. So that's what you're saying.
Is that what that is?
Oh. ioby.org is a nationwide nonprofit, and I've been the Pittsburgh manager. And we're founded in a belief that neighbors know what's best for their neighborhood, local knows best, and those who are closest to a problem are best equipped to solve it. So what we do is we teach how to build a story and a momentum building plan to amplify that story. And sometimes it means asking for donations. Sometimes it means asking for volunteers. And a lot of the time, the real purpose is gathering resources, but gathering our people so that our people together can decide what our future is for ourselves. And so from that self-determination work, ioby is here as a collaborator to walk alongside with crowdfunding strategy, because really the crowdfunding result is more and more people who prove this is what's right, and we have the resources, so we're going to get it together and do it ourselves. And what we often find is that crowdfunding as one piece of your strategy pie for resources can do some of the proving that institutions might need in order to apply to a grant, or other donors might need before they're able to jump on board. They need to see other people first before they decide to be confident in the idea. So we're here as a teacher and collaborator. Our coaching is free and open, so anyone can talk with us, ioby.org/idea, and we have all the registrants. So we're going to do a little follow-up email from each of our organizations so that you're connected with us directly. But we really want to thank you for listening, for hearing resources, and hearing the leadership in hyper-local work all across our region that comes and bubbles up together to a Pittsburgh that's saying, arts can lead the vision in our communities and is implementing with our people how to decide a thriving future for all, with artists at the forefront of that. Christiana, what else should we close with for today? Thank you. Ooh, you're on mute. Thanks.
I don't really know, except for thank you. And everyone feel free to reach out to us to learn more about what we do or share what you're doing. I find that's very valuable. I can't see everything. So the more that you can share with me your work or what you're interested in or what you're seeking, we can get you connected to what you need. So thank you, Miriam.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for
Bye.
recording, Corey.
Bye, Corey.